Shalom. Now, today I'd like to talk about the Proto-Semitic consonantal inventory and its relevance for students of Hebrew or Arabic learning biblical Aramaic. Now, if we look here to the left chart, we look at the Proto-Semitic consonantal inventory. The top half is in English. The bottom half is when I teach this class to my Hebrew students. But right now, we'll just concern ourselves. I'll teach in English. So we start here. First, we're going to look at the left side. Then we'll look at the right. So the Proto-Semitic consonantal inventory, we've so far been able to isolate the labials over here, which are labial, from the Latin word for lips. So pa and ba, ma and wa. Now, the occlusives or stops are right here where pa, no air passes through, right? There's unvoiced, Z is unvoiced, V is voiced, and E is emphatic. So we have two here in the labial occlusive category, pa, and then a voiced ba. To feel a difference, put your hand in your throat and say pa, and then say ba. Ba, you hear the voicing of the vocal cords. Now down here we have a nasal ma, right, pronounced through the nose, and a semivowel wa. All right, then we have dentals, ta, da, and tha, a triad, right? The dental occlusives, ta, and then the voiced version is da, and then the emphatic. Now the emphatic, this would be a tha in Arabic. This is the tet in Hebrew. And in Ethiopic, this would be like the Arabic is pronounced as a pharyngalized emphatic, so tha. But in Ethiopic languages, it's a glottalized ejective, ta, ta. And so what was the Proto-Semitic? We don't know, but you pays your money and takes your choice. However you want to realize that, or maybe another variant. But what we do with the Proto-Semitic reconstruction, we're reconstructing a theoretical etymon that best explains its appearance in the later daughter languages and the reflexes that we find in the later daughter languages. So, and so that's what we're working with here. Now, the fricatives, sa, dental fricative, right? Za, which is the voiced version, and okay, the emphatic. Arabic would do sa, and then the Ethiopic would do tsa, tsa, right? Okay, now over here you have a lateral fricative. So put your tongue on the alveolar ridge. Oh, by the way, let me back up a minute. This is the tzadeh in Hebrew. Okay, and sod in Arabic. And now, okay, the fricative lateral, if you put your tongue on the alveolar ridge behind your upper front teeth and open the right side of your mouth, you say, the basis of epigraphic South Arabic and modern South Arabian languages. This phoneme has been isolated. I refer you to the excellent monograph by well, at any rate, the case for fricative laterals in Proto-Semitic by Richard Steiner. I refer you to this excellent monograph for evidence for isolation of these two laterals. And here would be a voiced lateral. The same sound as this, except you voice it. Now, it is what became da in Arabic. That's why I put a D with a dot under it. That's da in Arabic. And what is in Hebrew, we'll get to that later. But this is the seen in Hebrew. The seen with a dot to the left, right? Versus the sheen with a dot to the right, which is down here, the palatal. So that's seen. If you've ever wondered why the Hebrew alphabet has a samech and a sin that both sound alike. This is why. Originally, they did not sound alike. And by the way that this was written in the Canaanite alphabet and the later Aramaic script and Hebrew and all of that, without vocalization, is just the letter. You don't have a dot to the left or right. That is invention of the Masoretes, the 7th and 10th centuries in Tiberia, where they indicated that to distinguish these two consonants, which is very interesting because it's only the Jewish oral tradition that preserved those for centuries before they were recorded by the Masoretes. But from comparative Semitics, the dot to the left, the sin, corresponds with Proto-Semitic very well. All right, and so now the liquid la and the nasal ra, all right, doing this as a dental flap, ra, and like the Spanish R or something like that. The nasal na. So you see the dentals have the largest category here, and then the interdentals, tha, the, and the. Interestingly enough, these have dropped out in both Hebrew and Aramaic, but tha, this is classical Arabic, preserves tha and preserves the, and z. I'm sorry, I messed this up. Tha, the, and the. The, and classical Arabic has two different traditions for how to realize this, but for this triad, unvoiced, voiced, and emphatic, it would fit with the, and the as being original. But all right, for whatever that's worth. And so what are these in Hebrew and Aramaic? In a minute, we'll get to these. Okay, palatal sha, this is the sheen in Hebrew. Now look at the velars, ka, ga, and ka, right? The unvoiced, voiced, and emphatic, ka in Arabic or ka in Ethiopic. And then we have the fricative velar, a triad, cha, ra, and cha. I'll talk about that in a minute. Cha, this is our in Israel today. Most of us adopt the Ashkenazic pronunciation of cha, but Sephardic Jews will still say ha, and for the letter chet. But we're going to see that het is right here and chet is right here. And those were two distinct phonemes as we hear in Arabic, cha and ha. And then ra right here, which is a voiced velar, ra, right? And now John Hunegard very cleverly identified this as a separate phoneme, even though we don't see a realization of it in any daughter language. But it's because of some correspondences that has long been noted by Assyriologists between Akkadian cha and West Semitic ha that should have merged with with the laryngeal in Akkadian, but didn't. And so Hunegard posits that that's because there was a third member of this triad here, this velar fricative triad, an emphatic cho, he posits, that did not merge with but in Akkadian. But, and I refer you to his article on Akkadian cha and West Semitic ha. It was published some years ago for evidence on this. And so now what do we have here? And then pharyngeal ha and fricative and voiced Okay. Now in Hebrew, this is cha, this is the chet. Now both phonemes merged in the later Hebrew dialects, but there's good evidence that right on up into Second Temple times, these two phonemes were distinguished, cha and ha. And they were, you only had one letter to write it because, again, the Hebrews didn't invent this alphabet. They borrowed it from the northern Canaanites or the Phoenicians. And in northern Canaan, Proto-Semitic cha and ha had already merged with one phoneme. The same is the case, but so the Hebrews, when they borrowed the alphabet, just used the same letter, but it was polyvalent. And speakers of English shouldn't get too bent out of shape over this, because we have a number of letters in our alphabet that are polyvalent. The letter C, for example, can be ka or sa or maybe even cha in some loan words and so on. So, okay, velar, ra, right, and pharyngeal ah. Again, there's good evidence that the Hebrew letter ayin is used to represent both of these. But there's good evidence that they were distinguished, that letter ayin was polyvalent, even in Second Temple times. How do we know this? Well, evidence for both of these letters comes from Greek transcriptions, for example. In the Septuagint, words like we say Aza in Hebrew. In Arabic, it's Gaza. And in Greek, Gadza. The Greek Septuagint transliterated the name for Gaza, right, as we say in English, transliterated with a gamma. That's why we say Gaza in Hebrew. But the phoneme there, whenever Proto-Semitic Ra is transliterated into, let me word this right, whenever ayin is written for a Proto-Semitic Ra, the Septuagint translation, which is the Greek translation of the Bible from Alexandrian Jews in the 3rd century BCE, faithfully represent, or pretty consistently represented this with a gamma. But whenever there's a Proto-Semitic ayin behind the Hebrew letter ayin, then they represent it with a soft breathing mark. And so, and there's where we are able to get words like Aza, it's called Aza in Hebrew today, and Amorah for Gomorrah, Sodom and Gomorrah, and so on. That's why they sound different in English today. It's because of the Greek transliterations. Now, if you look here, laryngeal right, versus the fricative ha. And this is our aleph in Hebrew, and this is the hey in Hebrew. Oh, and the palatal sha and the semivowel ya. I think I might have forgotten to mention that. But at any rate, that is a Proto-Semitic consonantal inventory that we're able to reconstruct on the basis of various correspondences in the various Semitic languages. And you can see classical Arabic preserves most of these, but there's a problem with the sibilant shift of South Semitic and North Semitic, where sa, and sha do some interchanges. I don't want to go into that now. That's more relevant for when I teach Arabic or classical Ethiopic. But all right, let's look now here. In this chart, the red arrows show the correspondences with Aramaic, and the blue arrows show the mergers with Aramaic, and the blue arrows show the mergers with Hebrew. Let's look at Hebrew first. So first thing we see is that on the dental line, Proto-Semitic z merges with the tzadeh in Hebrew, which we say tzadeh in Hebrew, could be like the Ethiopic tza, right? Or could have been originally so, like the Arabs do it. Semitists are still in debate on this, but okay. And then, but for now we'll say so, but okay. At any rate, it merges with tzadeh in Hebrew. And then look at this line. The interdentals all drop out in both Hebrew and Aramaic, and in modern Arabic dialects we can see this as well, but in many cases. But all right, so Proto-Semitic th in Hebrew just lowers or moves further back in the mouth from th to sh. Becomes palatalized, right? Proto-Semitic the moves to za. And they're both voiced, but now it becomes a full dental. And then the Proto-Semitic the merges with tzad in Hebrew, however realized, sa or tz. All right, but they merge. And so when you see a tzad in Hebrew, it could be a merger of three, it could be representative of three separate Proto-Semitic consonants. Proto-Semitic tz, Proto-Semitic the, or Proto-Semitic z. All right, now let's look at the red arrows and see what happens with Aramaic. These three interdentals just move forward and to the left. The fricatives become occlusives, and they are fully dentalized. So th merges with ta, the merges with da, and the merges with tha. And we see over here that Proto-Semitic z merges down here with ein in Aramaic. Now that is going to really help us in learning vocabulary in biblical Aramaic. So, for example, thalath means three in Arabic, and shalosh in Hebrew, right? Because tha merges with sha. So thalath becomes shalash, becomes shalosh, because you have Canaanite shift in Hebrew. So that stressed long goes to o, giving us shalosh for number three in Hebrew. Whereas in Aramaic, tha merges with ta. So how do you think you would say three in Aramaic? Talat, talat. So the tha goes to ta. Now you have something else going on, and that that penultimate vowel, thalath, tha, reduces to shavah. It's an Aramaic vowel reduction rule that we'll learn about a little bit later on. And so we get talat for three in Aramaic. So if you come across talat, you can immediately, in an Aramaic text, you can immediately triangulate. Oh yeah, shalosh in Hebrew, thalath in Arabic. All right, the, so Proto-Semitic, the merges with za in Hebrew. So you have zahav, gold in Hebrew, and dahav, gold in Aramaic. Dahav. Notice you reduce that penultimate vowel. Dahav goes to dahav because of the Aramaic vowel reduction rule, where near open syllables reduced to shavah. And now if you look at Proto-Semitic the, it merges with the emphatic dental tha. And in Aramaic, so you see a word like nadara, right, in Arabic, and becoming natsal in Hebrew to guard, and natal to guard in Aramaic. So, and if you haven't already, download my Aramaic cheat sheet, and you can sign up to get my newsletter, and down below, and I can send you an Aramaic cheat sheet that will help you with vocabulary from both Hebrew and Arabic if you're just studying biblical Aramaic for the first time. Now, if you look at Proto-Semitic, we said it merged with tzad in Hebrew, but in Aramaic it merges with an ein down here. So this means a word like Arabic, ald, earth, ald, becomes eretz in Hebrew, but ara in Aramaic. It's a famous triad there. And we reconstructed is going back to a Proto-Semitic az. And but at any rate, this can really help you. Now there's some other things. We know that Northwest Semitic languages, wa goes to ya in word initial position, and there are some other things that will happen here, ma to na in certain cases, and so on. But this is the first thing that I want my students to get with a Proto-Semitic consonantal inventory when you're learning Biblical Aramaic, because this is a real vocabulary booster. It means that you will immediately recognize a whole lot of words. They're already recognizable to you, even without this. Then when you add this understanding, you can start to recognize even more vocabulary words when you're reading not just Biblical Aramaic, but any other Aramaic dialect, including Syriac. This can be very helpful. So, okay. Thank you very much. And shalom, shalom, or shalom in Aramaic.